Hello, this is Richard Norman again, and yesterday I told quite a bit about my the musical part of my life. Uh, but after I listened to what I said, I realized I needed to correct some probably misunderstandings that I implied, though I didn't say or mean. And the main thing is, uh, I chose to learn classical music. I chose that myself, and I spent most of my life in classical music. In fact, nearly all of it was mostly involved in classical music. Uh, and I told you I was well trained. I had some great voice teachers. But I think I left the impression that if you didn't study music and voice and have voice training, you were not a good singer. And that's not true at all. Uh, there are millions of people around this world that have beautiful voices and have never taken voice lessons. Uh, I loved all the big band singers of the 30s and 40s, and I don't think very many of them had any voice training at all, but they had beautiful voices. And I hear people all the time sing that have very, very pretty voices. They're just beautiful. They can sing so well. I could have done fine without the voice lessons. I just chose that route. And so I want to correct that false impression. I encourage everybody to sing. I think singing is good for you. It lifts your soul like almost nothing else. Singing is so good for you to do. And it doesn't matter if you don't sing well. I always have, all my life, you can ask my children, all my life I've said publicly to big audiences, if you can't sing good, sing loud. And that's my advice to everybody. Sing. It doesn't matter what it sounds like. It's a wonderful to do. It's good for your spirit, for your inner self. It really helps you a lot. It lifts your heart and your thoughts to loftier heights. And I encourage everyone to sing. A couple of other things I missed telling you about uh, yesterday, and one was that when I was in my senior year in high school, my voice teacher, Mrs. Broman, gave a voice recital for all of her students, and people came to that. I think perhaps maybe my parents came to that. I don't remember at all. It wouldn't have mattered to me if they came or not. I always did my own thing, and I never felt I had to have the approval of my parents. Uh, I didn't do it to impress them at all. I was in several plays in high school. I don't think they came to any of those. And our chorus in high school gave many performances, and I don't think my parents ever attended those. It wasn't their thing. They were not into music and drama, and it didn't bother me at all if they didn't come. I've heard people talk about how much they resented their parents because they didn't support them in the things they do. Well, you don't need that support. You do what you need to do, And if they like it, that's fine. If they don't like it, I don't care. I wanted to be an artist. My father thought I was crazy to be an artist. He said, artists starve to death. Well, I made more money in art than he ever made in his life as a banker. And he was president of a bank. And, but that's another thing. Anyway, my voice teacher gave this recital. And I also want to tell you that my voice teacher had me buy music to sing. And I never, in all my studies with voice teachers, I never sang popular music, never. All the music I sang, I was trained to sing, was classical music, songs, classical songs, and I had books full of those songs. And most of them were in a foreign language, either mostly Italian and German. I sang a lot, and she taught me how to read and pronounce those words. I never really understood very much in foreign languages like Italian and German, but I could pronounce them correctly. Anyway, I sang in that recital 3 songs, operatic songs, classical songs in foreign languages. I think maybe I sang 1 in English, and I don't remember what I sang for that recital. But a few days after that recital, I got a phone call from the head of the music department at Texas University. In those days, Texas University was only in Austin, Texas, and occupied only 40 acres of ground. And it cost $500 a semester to attend Texas University back then. But anyway, I got a call and he invited me to come and visit with him. And so I went down to the university and went to his office, and he said that he was in the audience and heard me sing those songs. And he wanted to offer me a full 4-year scholarship in voice. And especially if I would sing operatically. They really wanted me to be a part of that and to learn that and to get a degree in vocal performance. And I thought about it a little bit. And about that same time, I was thinking also about trying to get into popular songs and popular singing on the radio and stuff. And I realized, in fact, I knew Pat Boone, and he said that wasn't a good route to go. He said that's not a very good environment to be in. And he discouraged that. And so I sort of abandoned that idea because you had to sing in nightclubs and bars and all kinds of places that I didn't want to go to those kinds of places. And so I said, I don't want to go that route. And so I did consider going the route of opera. And I was reading a Saturday Evening Post magazine about that same time that I had that offer from Texas. And I read an article by a man named Jan Pierce. He was a Metropolitan Opera tenor. And he wrote a short article in the Saturday Evening Post about being an opera singer And he told about the fact that you did a lot of traveling because as an opera singer, you traveled all over the world to the great opera houses in other countries and around the world. And so you had to live out of a suitcase and travel away from home for long periods of time. And he said you missed a lot of your children's growing up. You missed being with your wife a lot. And you were separated a lot. And I thought, I don't want that kind of life. I don't want to live out of a suitcase. I don't want to be away from home a lot. I wanted to have a home and a family and be there for my kids and for my wife all the time. And so it was there and then that I turned that down, that offer of a scholarship. And I'd made the decision then and there that I would not pursue music as my occupation. I decided then and there that I would be an artist. In fact, really, I haven't got around to talking about art yet, but the truth of the matter is that at the age of 8, I was selling Saturday Evening Post magazines door to door as a little kid, 8 years old. And I saw the pictures that Norman Rockwell painted on the Post covers and the other artists. There were several great artists that did paintings and illustrations for that magazine. And I decided then and there really that what I wanted to be was an illustrator. And that's what I became. But anyway, about the singing, that's when I decided that I wouldn't do that. The other thing I want to talk about is that when you really learn to sing properly, there are advantages that you get from that. That would help any singer. Voice lessons would help any singer in any genre. But when you sing correctly, there's no tension at all in your throat or in your neck, anywhere. No tension at all. You're completely relaxed. You can turn your head. You can make all kinds of. You can sit down to sing. You can lie down. You can lie down on an elbow. Sit down, stand up, walk. And there's absolutely no tension. It's not demanding at all if you sing correctly. And that is an advantage. You've seen people that hold the microphone up to their face and scream into it, sing into it. Well, my microphone, when I sing, is almost 3 feet away from me. If I had it up close, you really would hear something. Because I have a loud voice. That brings me to the other thing. There are people who are merely screamers. They're not really singers. They don't really sing. They scream songs. But there are millions of really wonderful singers. But when there's one thing you may not know about grand opera, no opera singer ever is mic'd up. They do not wear microphones or have them on stage. They have no microphones at all, none of them. If you see a microphone in the front of the stage for a grand opera, or many times even choral performances with soloists, you may see some microphones standing around, but they are not for broadcasting the singing, they're for recording the singing. When you sing in an opera, you sing over 100-piece orchestra and many times 120 or so choral singers. And if you sing the solo, you have to sing louder than both of them. And so you have to really know how to project your sound. And that's what the good voice training does. It trains you to project your sound in order to be heard in a large audience without a microphone above an orchestra. And so I wanted you to know that as well. I think that's all I had written down about music that I wanted to share with you, in addition to what I did yesterday. And so now I think I'll talk a little bit about art. I'm a little early today in this live thing, and I hadn't finished my second cup of coffee yet. The cup says, instant human, just add coffee. I drink a lot of coffee, strong and black, and always have. And I think that's what keeps me going. That gets my heart started and gets me active and able to do things. There are some people that makes them nervous and jumpy, but it just keeps me alive. But anyway, I wanted to tell you about art. It's hard to explain to somebody that doesn't have that kind of gift at birth. But my mother told me that when I was a little baby and could barely sit up on the floor, that she would just put a piece of paper down on the floor and give me a pencil, and I'd sit there and scribble joyously and happily for hours. And she didn't have to worry about me. If I got one paper filled up, well, she'd give me another one, and I'd draw nearly all day. And that's the way she kept me busy and out of her hair. And so I could always draw. As a baby, of course, it was just scribbles. But as I began to get older, I began to really draw and enjoy drawing things. And I went to the store and I found pencils that I thought were better than others for drawing. And I found art pencils, and I bought them, and I bought tablets and myself. And I drew a lot. Just as 4, 5, 6 years old, I was drawing all the time. And when I went to school, I have to tell you about school sometime, but back when I was a little kid, the kindergarten was you had to pay for if you went to kindergarten. Well, during the Great Depression, we couldn't do that. And so, but our schools always started the day after Labor Day in September. And to enter first grade, you had to be 6 years old. Well, I would have been 6 years old on the 15th of September. And so I was not allowed to go to school until I was almost 7 because of that rule. But anyway, I started to school, and I was in about the 3rd grade, I remember. And there was an art contest. We had art. And I need to tell you this. I went to my first art class in grade school. I went to it, and the teacher drew a big circle on the blackboard and divided it into 3 portions. And she said, I'm going to teach you about the color wheel and how to mix colors. And so she was going to put red, yellow, and blue because those are the primary colors. If you have red, yellow, and blue, you can paint anything. You can mix any color you want. Anyway, she was going to do that. Well, I had a little box of crayons there, and I think it had about 8 crayons in it. So I drew a circle and put 6 little pie slices in it. And I did red and orange and yellow and green and blue and purple and black and white in that. And when my teacher saw that I already knew what colors were mixed to make what other colors, she separated me from the class and gave me paper and colors and whatever. And I worked independently of the class. And that was true all the way through high school. I always knew more than the teacher was going to teach the kids. I was advanced in art. And so I was allowed to work independently all through high school, even. And when I was in the 3rd grade, there was a citywide art contest. And my teacher insisted that I do a picture and enter it in that contest. Well, I did. And I was in the 3rd grade, and I won 1st place in the city among all the schools. So that was kind of an indication of the talent that I was given at birth. I had nothing to do with that. It was something I couldn't help it. I couldn't help being an artist any more than I could help breathing. It just was so natural to me. And when I was in high school, I won all kinds of art contests. But I didn't care about contests because I didn't believe that you should really have contests in art because every artist is different. I can't imagine the great painters of history in a contest with each other. I mean, Michelangelo was not a better artist than Monet or Cézanne or any of the others. Judging a contest of any kind, really, is very subjective. It's up to the judges, their subjective opinion about art. what they believe is good art. And it has nothing to do really with the art, whether the thing is good or bad. It's just too subjective. So I really didn't pursue contests. I would get in them, but my teachers would do that. And I would win some and I would lose some. But I was an artist in high school. I did art for the school newspaper, and I always worked on the annual school annuals. I did artwork for that. I did the cover designs for the annuals and stuff all the way through high school. And everyone in school considered or knew that I was going to be a professional artist. There was no doubt in anyone's mind. And so after I grew up and got out of high school, I was going to go to Texas University and study art, commercial art. I didn't want to be a fine artist. I knew I'd starve to death as a fine artist. I didn't want to be a painter. I wanted to be an illustrator and designer of things. And so I already knew that. But when September came around, before September came around for me to enter college, I met this young lady. She was 17. I saw her about 40 feet away, and I fell in love with her immediately when I saw her. I thought, that's the most beautiful girl I've ever seen in my life. And my high school had a lot of pretty girls in it, but nobody was as pretty as she was. But anyway, that's another story, and I'll tell that later. But we had a kind of a whirlwind courtship. I asked her to marry me on our third date, and 2 months later we were married. We had known each other only 54 days when we got married, but it lasted 61 years. Then cancer took her away, but I loved her all that. I still love her. Still love her very much. It was a wonderful, wonderful life. But it was, I did want to paint in oils some, and I couldn't afford them because we were so poor. Art materials were very expensive, especially oil paintings. Tubes of oil paint were very expensive, and I just couldn't buy them. But after we married for a couple of years, and I worked and I began to make a little money, I managed to buy red, yellow, blue, and black and white in oil paintings. And I was looking for something to paint, and my wife found a picture in a book of a Japanese sampan in a harbor with a mountain behind it, but it was in black and white. And I said, I can't paint that. That's in black and white. And she said, well, go ahead and try it. Well, I did. I painted that picture in color in oil paints. And when I got done and I looked at what I had painted, the water, it was water at the bottom of the mountain, and this sampan was in that water. Well, that water came out too flat, and it didn't look right. And so I had to rework the water with oil paint. That's what's good about it. You can paint over it and you can make corrections easy enough. So I did that. I painted that over. And finally, one night, I could see it was coming right. The angle was right, and I was getting it. And so it was 2 in the morning when I finally finished that painting and got it done. And I think I was probably 22 or 23 years old, maybe a little older. I'm not sure. My coffee's going to get cold. But I had joined a group in Texas called the Texas Fine Art Society. It cost $5 a year to join, and so I joined that group. And they gave shows every once in a while. And I thought I'd enter some of my paintings and things in those shows, see if I could sell anything. Anyway, the Dallas Museum of Art set up a show, a contest, an art contest for the Texas Fine Arts Association. And you could enter an oil painting and it would be hung, they would be hung in the Dallas Museum of Art. They would be judged, and there would be prizes to win. I don't remember what the prizes were. I didn't care about that. But I thought I'd enter that painting. It was my first oil painting ever. And I painted it with red, yellow, and blue, and black and white. That's all I had. But I painted that picture and entered it in that contest. And I've learned that there were 750 paintings entered in that contest. But the Dallas Museum of Art only had room to hang 75 paintings. And out of those 750 paintings, my painting got in. And my painting won honorable mention in the Dallas Museum of Art, 4th place. So I must have been pretty good as an artist. But again, I never did study art or go to school, but I sure did work at it, learning it and developing my skill through all of those years. But I had started out working summers in a bank because my dad was a banker and I was a gopher through the summers for a couple of years. And then when I got out of high school and got married, I had to stay in the banking business. And I was in it for 6 frightening years. I hated banking. I really did. And so it turned out that we moved to Dallas in 1952, my wife and I, and we had a little boy. He was about 3, and he was born in 1950, actually. And I worked in a bank, and I was so discouraged because I wasn't making $300 a month in a bank, and I was in the executive loan department, handling all of the business collateral that came in for big loans in the bank. It was the biggest bank in Texas. And I was headed to get ahead in that bank, but I really hated that job. And so one day I got so frustrated, I looked in the newspaper to see what I could find to change jobs. And Texas Instruments had a little ad for technical illustrators. Well, I wanted to be an illustrator, but I had no idea what a technical illustrator was. I'd never seen those two words together. But that afternoon, after I got off work, I went out to TI. There was only one little building on Lemon Avenue at that time. And I applied for that job. And so the head of the art department came to that interview, and 2 or 3 other guys in the employment department, and interviewed me. And I said, I don't know what a technical illustrator is, but I tell you that I can draw anything I can see. And they said, well, do you have any samples of your work? And I said, well, I don't have any. I've never been to school. I don't have a college degree. And it really, that job required a college education to get that job. But I didn't have one. But I applied anyway, and I insisted that I wanted it and that I could do the work. And so they said, well, let us see some of the things you've done. Do you have any artwork at home? Well, I brought that painting that I did, and I brought some drawings that I had done. I did a portrait of Audrey Hepburn that I was pretty proud of, and I had another portrait of an actress. I've forgotten her name now, but anyway, I had 2 or 3 drawings that I'd done while I was in high school. And so I brought about 5 or 6 pictures up there with that one oil painting. And lo and behold, they hired me. They hired me as a trainee. And so I got my first job as a technical illustrator at Texas Instruments. And I think I was 24 when I got that job. And so I had to learn how to do technical art. I had to learn to use a Leroy machine to print words and numbers. And I had to learn to use those pens that you need to use for that kind of drawing, and the triangles and all of the other equipment. And they set me up. It cost quite a bit of money to set me up with a drawing board and all of that material. And they showed me how to use it. And I had the first job I had to do was a wiring diagram, teeny little lines that were, it was a diagram, very articulate, meticulous. And it had little symbols in it all over, diodes and things. I don't remember what they are now, but anyway, my job, it was a drawing that had already been done. And what they wanted me to do was just to letter with that Leroy machine, all those little numbers and words and names and stuff for all of those lines and and doodads. And so I did it. It took me almost a week to do it because they're about 3 or 4 feet wide and about a foot tall, and it was very intricate. Anyway, when I got done, it was on a kind of a stiff cardboard, and I set it vertically behind me on the wall and put the new one just like it. I was going to start another one, and I took a deep breath and I stepped back, and my heel knocked that drawing up against the wall. Well, I didn't know that behind me was a sonar tank and it had water in it, and there was a little space about that far between the floor and that water tank wall, and that painting slipped down in there and went down into the sludge at the bottom of that tank. And I had to get a new one of that drawing and start over. I thought I was going to get fired, but I didn't. Anyway, that's the beginning of my art career, and I'll tell a little bit more about that tomorrow, perhaps. And I thank you for listening. I hope I'm not boring you to death with these things to tell you about them. But anyway, we'll see you again tomorrow. Goodbye.